Hey folks, it's Keith, Victor Echo 3 Sierra Victor Quebec, here today with a follow-up vlog or blog, whatever you want to call it, to a question I had asked in a previous video. In that video, I suggested that rather than me coming up with ideas and focusing on them for essentially new Morse code operators, that maybe you should tell me what are your issues so we could put them out there, because all sorts of people see this, all sorts of instructors as well as other people learning Morse code. So if nothing else happens from it, people will realize that they're not the only ones with that particular problem. So these are suggestions that came in, comments that came in from people after they looked at that video, some by email, some in various groups where that video was posted, some by email to me and so on, and some even in my classes. So what are the sort of the top 10, if you want, the top 10 issues that are out there? And I'm going to say the first one surprised me, but I think it's very accurate. Determination. How determined are you to complete your study of Morse code? And a few people mentioned that, they'd start off thinking it was going to be pretty easy, especially those who, like me, learned Morse code 35 years ago and then decided to relearn it. They thought it would be sort of a piece of cake. Of course, they found out that wasn't true. And then they really had to get down and buckle down and work. And like a few said, well, we got tired of that, we quit, we came back, we quit, we came back. So there's your first question to ask yourself. How determined are you to learn Morse code and get on the air? Interesting point, isn't it? The second issue that came up, which again, actually I have a video more or less on this subject, but it was one that was raised by a few people. Mental fatigue. Again, because you think this is going to be easy, it's a surprise at just how much work you have to do, how consistent your practice has to be. How many minutes a day, we usually say a minimum of 30, do you have to put into it? So the mental fatigue, that frustration that builds as you go forward. And here, you're thinking, geez, I only have the alphabet to learn and a few numbers. And it's not just a couple of days, it might be weeks, probably months as you work your way through. So that was another issue that came up, that sort of mental fatigue. A big issue that was repeated by a lot of operators, I guess probably people like myself, who took Morse code back in the 80s or 90s, where a lot of it was still taught by memorization, right? You memorize those Morse code charts. And the issue then was not that you couldn't get on the air doing that. You can, and I've actually had contacts recently with people who have got on the air that way. It was how it still haunts you years later because your brain likes to take a shortcut. So when I'm listening to someone send, and maybe they're sending a little fast, but I can still copy them, and then I miss a letter, my brain automatically goes back into counting dits and dahs, memorizing. Is that da diddy dit or is that dotty dit? And while I'm trying to figure that out, the other operator's still sending. So, and this came up in a number of cases. So whatever you do, remember, the learning methods right now are by acoustic sounds. You listen to the sound, the rhythm pattern, and so on. And eventually you should recognize it as quickly as I say ABC. If somebody sends you Morse code ABC, you should be able to process it basically instantly. So that was an issue that came up, fairly common one actually. The next two are issues that I haven't really had, but apparently other people have. So the first one, more experienced operators who are sending faster and simply won't slow down for a slower operator. So in other words, all the slower operator is getting is just a blur of dits and dahs. Basically in Morse code, sort of the unwritten code, a rule if you want, because it's definitely not carved in stone, faster operators slow down for the slower operators. It's common courtesy. And it helps because you don't want to frustrate an operator who's just starting and have them walk away from Morse code. So it doesn't hurt to help out the new operators. And if you're a new operator, don't be afraid to send either a question mark or QRS 2 or 3 times, right? QRS, QRS, QRS. If they don't slope down, well, you don't have to have the contact. It's as simple as that. Also, if you're a new op, keep in mind many of the POTA operators, those operating at faster speeds, if they're using electronic keyers and so on, it's very difficult for them to slow down. Now, what I have found in my case when I do that, usually the more experienced operator will simply leave a bigger space between each letter that they send. So it might be coming at me at, 17 words per minute, 18 words per minute, but the space is large enough that I have time to process what it was sent. So keep in mind that's one of the issues as a new operator, because everybody, if you're new, likes to go on POTA. And the other issue is contests. Contest operators are there to get the greatest number of contacts in the shortest amount of time. So most of them are up somewhere around 30, 35 words per minute. They're not slowing down for you. All right, not unless it's the end of the contest and they've got all the points they need or whatever. They're just in it. There's a rhythm they've got, they're not slowing down for you. So if you're a new operator, you don't necessarily have to get involved in the bigger contests. There's lots of smaller ones that you can do where people are a little bit slower as well. Again, there's another one which was raised, and that was rude operators. Now, it's one that I have not come across. And this is where basically someone will say to another operator, geez, you need to go back and learn Morse code or whatever. I've not run into that. I found Morse code operators, especially those who've been doing this for a number of years, to be absolutely wonderful and very, very helpful. And again, don't take criticism just because someone sends you a note or something. Don't take that necessarily the wrong way. And, in many cases, they may be offering advice. Now, you send an email or something like that, it sometimes comes across the wrong way. But in many cases, it's older operators trying to help you as well. But if they're rude, this is a hobby. Just ignore them, move on. Right? There's lots of other people you can talk to when on the air. Now, the issue that comes up periodically, and again, I think with most new ops, you're going to run into it, and it does annoy veteran ops to a certain extent. No spacing, right? You're new, you're excited, you're on the air, you're probably sending faster than you can copy anyways. But you get so excited and the adrenaline's flowing, you just send. Your fist is pounding away there, sending letter after letter and so on. But you forgot your spacing, right? The other operator can't copy what you're sending because you didn't leave enough space between your letters and you didn't leave enough space between your words. So that's something that frustrates older operators, and it's a very, very common mistake that new operators make. And again, you may get lucky. I think it was my second or third contact. I thought I was doing great. And when it was all over, because on that program or on that site, we could send messages to each other, the operator sent me a note and he said, when I get your individual letters, they're really well formed. I really like how you send. But he said, you're not leaving any spaces. And he says, I'm just getting a maze of words come at me. So he said, I just thought I'd let you know. Did I take that as an insult? No. I took it as someone trying to help me become a better operator. So since then, yes, I've watched my spacing carefully every time I'm on the air. It's like second nature now. And now I've had veteran operators say to me, you have a really nice fist. So there's your difference, right? They're not criticizing you per se. In many cases, they're actually offering you advice. And it's always helpful when one of them does. Another one that came up, and I guess there's a group here really, but one was ICR and listening to ICR. And a lot of people like myself, I love ICR. I would spend more time doing ICR than anything, even to the detriment of not doing some things I should do, because I just loved ICR, I still do. With ICR, it was moving from those single letters, single numbers, to groups. That was the issue. You You've got time when you're doing ICR to pull out one letter. But what happens now when it's 3 letters, 4, 5? This was a common one, and actually people raise it in class as well. This is one of the biggest issues that people have, starting to copy those groups of letters. Now, I know when I first started the website I use, we did groups of 5 right off from the beginning. And my goodness, that was hard for the first week or two, but then after a while, your ear got tuned to it. So if you're getting frustrated because you've moved from 1 letter to 3 letters or even short words or abbreviations, it's practice. Practice makes perfect, as they say. And yes, good practice, solid practice, putting in the time, having the determination, right? All of that stuff, you're going to overcome it. And it does come a little bit easier as you go along. Another issue that came up was head copy. And it was interesting because we're talking about new operators here, right? And they were complaining about their inability to head copy. Well, if all you've done is learn the alphabet, some of the pro signs, the numbers, and so on, and you're just on the air, don't expect to be able to head copy everything. That's something that will come with a lot of experience. Some organizations and teaching institutions will help teach you how to head copy, but don't expect miracles the moment you're on the air. That will come. And I found with myself, it was beginning to recognize words that people were sending. You know, abbreviation, someone sending TU for thank you, or RST, or maybe, see you later, CUL. I began to pick those up. I still do. Do I write them all down now when I hear them? No, because I can understand what those people are saying. So it does come to you over time. And yes, those operators who can do high speed, it must be a wonderful experience to just sit back and know what's flowing your way and be able to send again pretty much the same way. Another issue that came out was speed, and this was a very common one. New operators being frustrated because they weren't fast. And I guess my first piece of advice is I would rather you send as close as possible to perfect code rather than fast code. And once you're on the air, if you're a new operator, as you get on the air, the more often you're on the air, things do settle down. You do get faster. You do copy better. You do send better. So don't get frustrated because right off the bat, right at the beginning, you're not doing 20, 25, 30 words per minute. Focus on doing well at whatever speed you've been taught, and work on building your speed as you go forward. But that was definitely an issue that was out there. And another one which came up, and actually it was one of mine as well, the protocols. You get on the air, what exactly are you supposed to send, right? Do you send this? How do you turn a conversation or whatever your comments are? How do you turn it back to the other operator? Simple little things like this, the protocol about how you do it. And that was one, even I'm remembering back now, 1990, that was an issue that I found then. Where do you go to find these protocols? How do you learn them? Well, in many cases, they're on the sites that you're visiting. So if you're on an SKCC site, if you go to their main page, they will give you a sample script, if you want to use that word, or protocol, and tell you what's expected of you, what you're going to have to send. If you're on the K1USN site, the SST, they'll give you an idea of what it is you're supposed to send. Most contests will give you an idea as to what's expected when you're answering. So do a bit of research, and again, some clubs, some institutions, your ham mentor, if you have one, they'll help you with that. But yes, get it down. I've got cheat sheets. I'm not proud. I've got cheat sheets. So if I'm doing POTA, I can just glance over at my cheat sheet. I know exactly what I'm going to send. If I'm going to do the SKCC, same thing. If I'm going to do FIS, same thing. It's not hard. And over time, you find you use them less and less. But if I get flustered, if something happens, I can just a quick glance over and I know exactly where I'm supposed to pick up. And I also know roughly where the other person's is and what they're sending. So those are the things that I think you need to work on. And, folks, it's supposed to be fun. This is, after all, a hobby. And yes, it can be frustrating, but if you sit back, you take your time, push yourself a little bit, but not too hard, you're going to enjoy it. There's lots of operators out there waiting for you. Many operators using straight keys if you like slightly slower speeds, like myself. I just use a straight key. I don't use a paddle. There are other operators out there with the paddles doing wonderful speed and, contests and who knows what. It's not my thing. You find your thing. You find your niche in the Morse code world, in the CW world. What is it that's going to interest you? Is it a paddle? Is it a straight key? Is it a bug? Is it a cootie? You're going to find your spot. But the main thing to do is get to that point. Get through the basics, get through your Morse code studying with whoever you're doing it with, or even if you're doing it on your own. Get yourself on the air, have a bit of fun, because everything else after that comes a little bit easier. It's Keith, Victor Echo 3, Sierra Victor Quebec, also known as the Shaky Key. If you like this video, please mark down below, like, share, comment down below, whichever you want. I do read them all. And if you're watching this video and just deciding to go join some organization to learn Morse code, tell them the Shaky Key sent you. I think you'll enjoy the journey. 73.